My friends, right now, it's pure fog of war in the United Arab Emirates. Channels in the region reported shots fired by the Revolutionary Guard toward Abu Dhabi and explosions at an American base. And the government of Dubai has already denied explosions in the city center. In the city center. No one has officially confirmed anything, but if the Abu Dhabi part is confirmed, the only pattern holding this whole conflict together has just been broken. And that's not the only bombshell of the day. Early this morning, for the first time since this war resumed, American fire reached the gates of Tehran. The capital's air defense was activated right over the city itself. Iran responded by pulling out a missile from its stockpile that it had saved for only one destination. And do we know what that destination is? Israel. The Wall Street Journal also revealed the three cards that are now on the table for Trump. And one of them involves American troops setting foot on Iranian soil. And in Tehran, more posters have appeared, folks. More new posters using the death of American Senator Lindsey Graham to send a direct message to the President of the United States. So stay with me, because today the board has shifted once again, folks. Once again, straight from Israel, right from where everything is happening. And before anything else, I want to ask the followers who live in Dubai to leave your comments here. Rodrigo, did you hear any explosions there in Abu Dhabi? Leave your comments here so we can understand a little more deeply what's going on. Last night I showed you a vase which was in the dark. I also explained why this city was the key to a possible operation on the oil island. If you missed that video, I'll put the Karg Island video in the cards up here. Because early this morning, that whole logic got pushed further than anyone expected at this point. The fire early this morning hit 12 different points in Iran, from the coast to deep inland. I'm not going to bore you here with 12 difficult names really hard to pronounce. I'll give you the three that change history. The first is Parshin, the second is Semnan, and the third is Pakadashi. I think that's how you pronounce them. These are really hard names to pronounce, guys, these Persian names. Do you know what these three places have in common? They're all in the Tehran region. Let's go to the map here to show you exactly where these places are. I'm going to put up that little map where I've already marked these new targets. Opening it up here, look. Up here we already knew, right? Mashhad. And now these three targets. Here next to Tehran. Tehran. For those who can't see, Tehran is here. Look. I'm marking Tehran here in red. And here are the three targets. Pay attention. What do these places have in common? Parsin. Parshin is a military complex that is very close here. Look, right here, near the capital Tehran, very close, connected to the defense industries and the regime's space program. Semnan and Pakadashi are just east of the capital. Look, everyone, pay attention to what this means, because on previous nights, over Tehran, Parshin, and Semnan, over the capital, everyone for the first time since the war resumed. And there is official confirmation. Sources from the regime itself admitted that Semnan airport was hit and suffered damage. And yesterday, as we looked at the map here, I told you we were slowly getting close to Tehran, right? Around Tehran. And today it's no longer slowly. The fire is really literally, we can say, knocking at Tehran's door. And look at the symbolism of these cities, folks. That city of Parshin is where part of the heart of the regime's military industry is located. Missiles, rockets, space program. In other words, when this location here gets on the American list, the message is no longer just about the Strait of Hormuz or the ships. It's about the machine that makes the weapons. Iran felt it because the response that came from the Iranian side at dawn also says a lot. This was after the United States attacked. Iran fired back. For the first time in this round, a solid fuel ballistic missile. For the first time in this round, they had used this missile before, okay? So in this latest round, this was the first time they used a solid fuel missile with a range of 2,000 kilometers. Pay attention, everyone. And here I need to explain to you why this is a signal and not just another random launch. This type of missile, just so you have an idea, is one of the jewels of the Iranian arsenal. Solid fuel means it doesn't need to be fueled before launch. You take it out of the tunnel and launch it in minutes, without giving satellites time to see or even know where this missile was launched from. Remember that the other one, which used liquid fuel, needs to be refueled before being launched. In other words, fighter jets have time to intercept the launcher while it's refueling the missile. When it's solid fuel, it doesn't need that. And the range of 2,000 kilometers tells the rest of the story. This missile wasn't designed to hit Kuwait, nor Bahrain, nor the United Arab Emirates. It was designed from day one with only one target in mind. And that target is Israel. The destination of this launch is still unclear because no one has claimed where it landed, and we won't know either. No one is going to claim it. The assessment of military analysts here in the region is that it was used because of the power of its warhead. That's why they use this type of missile now, either to demonstrate that they still have strategic capability. But no one can take away the symbolism, right? This time, the regime opened the vault and showed the weapon it keeps to Israel, to us here. And it's a message. And here in Israel, we usually take this kind of message very seriously. And now let's go to the sea, because the American naval blockade stopped being just talk and turned into real fire. For those who remember, the blockade is working, it's happening right now. At this very moment, the blockade is once again back around Iran. For those asking about Dubai, take a look, everyone. There were explosions. Here's the report. Look, see? Here's the war map, okay? These are the reports of alarms in Dubai and of strong explosions in this region, okay? These are the reports. But some say it was somewhere else that people heard this here in Dubai. I'll get to this map in a moment and explain to you exactly what this means, okay? So yesterday, let's talk about the blockade. Yesterday, the blockade was just a warning. Remember that? If a ship approached, it would receive a radio order to turn around. And early this morning, US Central Command carried out the first show of force for the blockade. During this round, an empty tanker was sailing. An empty tanker ship sailing under the Curacao flag. It was heading for the cargo island, the oil island, the money island. The one you already know very well from this channel. The ship received repeated warnings and ignored all of them. Then an American fighter aimed at the ship's engine room and fired right at the engine room on purpose. That wasn't to sink the ship, it wasn't to cause any kind of oil leak in the sea, it was to stop the ship. The ship lost propulsion, immobilized in the middle of the water, and it never reached its destination, which was Cargo Island. So just notice how surgical this attack was. Hitting the engine room of a moving ship sends a double message. The first message is for the owner of the cargo, for the owner of this ship. The blockade is now serious, okay? And the second is for the world. We can stop the ship without spilling a single drop of oil into the sea. But the night wasn't just a victory for the Americans. And this channel here, as I always say, I bring both sides. Even though the leftists here get upset, I always bring both sides, folks. Pay close attention. Iran shot down a large American drone, the kind that does armed surveillance over Khuzestan province. That's the name of the place. They shot down more drones. Several of those drones have already gone down multiple times, folks, with so many, right? So many American drones. There have also been direct clashes between the boats of the Revolutionary Guard Navy, those small boats, okay? And American warships inside the Gulf. Nothing conclusive has come from that yet, okay? There are no casualties. We don't know anything from either side, and Jordan has become a daily target. Now, pay very close attention to Jordan, folks. The Jordanian army intercepted early this morning after our last live stream 8 missiles and drones that invaded the kingdom's airspace. Iran continues, also confirmed, keeps confirming that it's targeting communication systems and American fuel depots on Jordanian soil. Let's try to understand this here. It's been like this since Sunday, folks. Every day. And Jordan, just remember, for those who don't know, it's our next door neighbor here. Those who follow me know exactly what I've already told you, that I hear noises and sounds of interceptions from my house, folks. You can hear it and you can even see it. And here, let me give you my own take on this, okay? This is just my speculation. It's not a fact confirmed by any military analyst here in Israel, but it's my information, it's what I think, all right? I hope that on our side here in Israel, they're keeping an eye on what's happening in Jordan right now, because pay attention to what Iran said they're targeting there. The Americans' communication systems, and communication is exactly the link that connects the radar to the alarm. Pay attention. Do you remember that in previous phases Iran tried to blind Israel? Does anyone here remember that? For those who are new to the channel, you probably don't remember, but I've brought this up here several times, guys. Destroying there. At the time, Iran went after the long-range radars. Does anyone remember that? The eyes that spot a missile when it's still far away. In other words, when it leaves Iran, it's this radar that detects the missile and is able to give Israel a 15-minute warning, okay? So they went after this kind of system back then. And I wonder if it's not the same thing again, only now from the Jordanian side. Because we know that those batteries they had in Saudi Arabia were destroyed. And as far as I know, the Americans only had 8 of this type of radar. 8. And some had already, 3 or 4 were destroyed here in the region, and the others were on the other side of the world, one in Taiwan, another in Japan. As far as we knew, you know what happened back then. Okay? So now they're targeting Jordan once again almost every day, guys. Almost every day. And why? Because Jordan is right between Iran and Israel. The radars that are there, they're right up front, guys. They're part of the warning time we get here in Israel. If you take out those advanced eyes, what happens? The missile will be launched from Iran, and the siren here in Israel will sound later. The interval between the launch and the alarm gets shorter. And fewer seconds of warning means more people without enough time to reach the shelter, here in Israel. For those who remember, before the alarms used to be 15 minutes, then they were reduced to 5 minutes because there was a lack of this kind of detector, a radar in Saudi Arabia that had been destroyed. Alright? So it could be that the same thing is happening now without any media coverage. This is my personal analysis of what's happening here. So the question remains, and I really hope I'm wrong about this, could it be that they're not even saying Israel's name, right? They're not saying the name Israel, they're staying silent, paving the way for something to hit here in Israel, paving the way for this, right? I'm not claiming anything, but keep that question in mind, because on the day the siren goes off here in Israel with almost no warning, you'll remember this night. You'll remember that I'm saying this today. And now I need to show you that it's the lowest point of the day and it's hanging on an avenue in Tehran. Do you remember the American Senator Lindsey Graham, one of Israel's greatest friends in the Senate? A close Trump ally and strong supporter, known for being a harsh critic of the regime, just so everyone knows. Explosions and attacks are happening right now once again in the south of Iran, down there near Kersh Island, okay? Right now, at this exact moment, local time is 9:35 p.m. So, let's get back to the senator. The senator died on Saturday at the age of 71. According to official information, it was a natural death. The preliminary report indicated an aortic dissection, a sudden heart problem. He had just returned from a trip to Ukraine. So, in theory, it would have been natural causes. That was confirmed by the doctors. So, keep that information in mind. Because the Iranian regime put up a giant poster today, on one of the main avenues in Tehran. They always do that, right? They send messages through posters there in Tehran. And on the poster, I'm not going to show that poster here. I'll share it on my WhatsApp, okay? I'll share it on WhatsApp so you can check it out and see exactly what's on it. I'll share this poster on WhatsApp and Telegram instead of here, since showing it in the video could get it taken down. The poster has a hashtag with the senator's name at the bottom. At the top, there's a question in English. Who's next? Look, everyone, it's all in red, okay? And there's also a detail drawn there for those who understand what's going on. In the way the letters in the phrase were stylized, there's the D and the T, which appear bigger than the rest of the text. They complete the text, but there's the D and the T, and D and T stand for Donald Trump. Pay attention, guys. Who's next? DT Donald Trump. So, look at what the regime is doing. They take the death of an American senator, which doctors said was natural, in theory, and treat it as if it literally had something to do with them. And here's the question nobody is asking. Is this the regime claiming responsibility? A message that their reach extended all the way there, even to the senator? I leave the question with you, but whether they take responsibility or not, the goal is the same, to use this death to publicly threaten the President of the United States. That's not strength, it's just street theater for local audiences, which is why it's on a billboard in Tehran. A regime that, if it were winning, wouldn't need to claim responsibility for the death of a 71-year-old senator. Do you agree with me? But take note, because this poster connects with that other one, right? With that other one, the eye for an eye one, which I also showed you a few days ago. It's the same pattern. The public square is now the regime's main channel for threats. And now there's another poster today, also in the same Palestine square, with Netanyahu and Trump drowning in blood, okay? Drowning right there in the middle of the Palestine square. They change the poster every day. So first, the background. In the last few days, channels, let's talk here now, folks. Let's get into the story, which could really turn today or tomorrow upside down, and it's about the United Arab Emirates. First, the background. In the last few days, open source analysis channels started circulating images of drones hitting the port of Bandar Abbas in southern Iran. But when these analysts looked closely at the images, these images that I'm showing here, some of these images, you can see the drone passing by in the dark. If you zoom in a lot, you can see the drone. And the shape of those drones doesn't match the shape of American drones or Israeli drones. It matched the model that is manufactured in the United Arab Emirates. In other words, there is a suspicion, not yet confirmed, that the Emirates are secretly participating in this campaign against Iran. It's worth remembering that the Emirates they've said several times that they would, take revenge, that they would get involved in this war one way or another, and back then they said the same thing and they did it, okay? They did it. Keep that piece in mind because here's what happened tonight. Just now, residents reported loud booms in the Dubai area. There are also reports of a loud boom in the city center, and the local channels have started to point in one direction. Shots fired by the Revolutionary Guard in the direction of Abu Dhabi, and the noise could even be heard in Dubai. While I was preparing this live stream for you, another urgent report came in. Consecutive explosions at the Al Dhafra air base in the Emirates. Let me tell you what this base Al Dhafra is, because this name explains the whole night. It's a base 30 kilometers from Abu Dhabi. Let me put it here on the map, right? Because talking without showing doesn't help much. So I'm going to show this base here, which is marked exactly because these explosions happened. So this little map here, they mark all the places where some kind of explosion happened in the region or reports of explosions. Here's the base, which is Abu Dhabi. And the base is right here, Al Dhafra, okay? And this little blue dot here marks the name of the base and the reports of the explosions. Strong explosions were reported in the sky over Dubai. This was about 2 hours ago. Here's the evidence. I'm not making this up. All right, there's a message here saying the Dubai government says Reuters reports about explosions in downtown Dubai are false, according to the government of Dubai, okay? According to the government of Dubai. Now pay attention. This little base here is one of the biggest operating hubs for American fighter jets in the Gulf. And there's more. In the previous rounds of this campaign, back in February or so, and in March, this base was Iran's #1 target inside the Emirates. They even managed to hit an American radar worth $500 million, the THAAD. And the Americans had to evacuate aircraft from that base. Guys, $500 million. That's a lot of money, not just for a radar. In other words, if tonight's report is confirmed, Iran has returned to its old target. The target is the American base, but the sky the missile crosses is the sky over Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. And for the reasoning I explained to you, the result is the same. The Emirates are no longer on the list of those Iran had been sparing. And here, I'm going to be strict with you, as always. Up until the time I'm recording this video, talking to you here, no one has officially confirmed anything. Neither the Emirates, nor Iran, nor the Americans. All we have are reports from residents and witnesses, plus what just came in recently. The government of Dubai has already released an official statement saying that there were no sounds of explosions in the city center. Notice this wordplay, because it always repeats itself, folks. Every time a base is hit in the region, no one takes responsibility, no one admits anything. Not the ones who fired, not the ones who were hit, and not even the country that hosts the base. And Dubai, which thrives on tourism, business, and airplanes landing, would be the last place in the world to admit that a bomb fell in its center. Do you agree with me? That's not part of it. No one is going to say that, folks. Denial is part of the game. This is real-time fog of war, and I break it down for you. Pay attention to the detail. Dubai denied reports about downtown Dubai. That was the statement. They denied reports about downtown Dubai. Look at the statement again here. See? Reuters news about explosions in downtown Dubai is false. In downtown Dubai, that's very clear. In other words, it wasn't downtown, it didn't happen, but Dubai is not Abu Dhabi and it's not the Al Dhafra base. So the denial only covers part of it, not the whole story. That's why I don't rush with rumors. I present both sides and wait for confirmation, even if it never comes. Now, let me remind you what I said. Show the little planes currently in action. Let me remind you what I said, folks. Yesterday, right here on the list of signs to watch, I told you as long as Iran spares the Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, it would be contained. The day it breaks that pattern, its calculation has changed and the whole board changes along with it. There are also reports of explosions in Saudi Arabia. Look here. Alarms went off here in Saudi Arabia. I think it was Riyadh. No, Riyadh. There were alarms in this region as well. There were alarms in this region, guys. Alarms here in Saudi Arabia as well. Now, if there was any target over there, I'm not sure. There's no confirmation from anyone. But it seems that the war is slowly taking another direction. Slowly. Because tonight might have been exactly that day what's happening. And notice how the two pieces fit together. If the Emirates secretly joined this campaign, with their drone hitting an Iranian port, Iran now has its own justification to strike back. If today's reports are confirmed, it wasn't madness at all. It was a response. And the Club of the Untouchables lost a member. Now only two are left on the list. On the list, Saudi Arabia and Israel. Right? Saudi Arabia and Israel haven't been officially hit yet, at least. And speaking of Saudi Arabia, look at what came from Yemen today. The leader of the Houthis made their most direct threat so far. He warned that if Saudi Arabia gets involved in the direct campaign against Iran, all the oil facilities and the kingdom's vital infrastructure will immediately become targets. Guys, check this out. Another threat from the Houthis against Saudi Arabia. A threat right now, guys, from the Houthis. Do you think they're really going to do it or not? And he stated it in a frighteningly simple way, guys. Airport against airport, Port against port and blockade against blockade. That's the official message from the Houthis. And there's more. According to a report that circulated today, Iran and the Houthis are said to have reached an agreement. If the Americans hit Iran's energy facilities next week, as Trump promised, the Houthis will close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Okay? And this would also be coordinated with Somalia, a total closure of that strait. So let me open up the map in your mind because this is huge, guys. The world has very few maritime choke points. Hormuz, the Strait of Hormuz, is Hormuz, which we're looking at here, see? It's one of them, you know it. And Bab el-Mandeb is this one down here, see? This one down here is another. It's the gateway to the Red Sea. It's the route to the Suez Canal, through which a good part of the trade between Asia and Europe passes. In other words, the message from this axis of evil is this. If the Americans put more pressure on Iran and on energy, they will close the second largest shipping passage on the planet. And then you ask me, can they do that? They can do that, folks. They have the ability to do that. All it takes is a madman up here on one of these mountains with a drone firing at ships passing by here. It's not that hard to do, right? These mountains are huge and can hide a lot. Just one or two madmen could do it, and over there are thousands. With several drones hidden here and constantly firing at ships over and over again, and that's it. They've already caused problems and basically closed for real the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, so it's not that hard. Hormuz is already choked, we already know that. If Bab el-Mandeb closes too, global freight costs, oil, and the price of everything you buy, for both you and me, will go up on the same day. This isn't just a regional conflict, the world's economy is being held hostage. That alone deserves your like, right? I think so. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe and turn on the notification bell because this story is changing by the minute. I used to say hour by hour, but now it's minute by minute, guys, because that's what's really happening. Israeli Air Force attacks on targets in southern Lebanon are happening right now as well, against Hezbollah targets while we're talking here. And CENTCOM just announced a new round of attacks in Iran right at this very moment, okay? CENTCOM is the American military command saying that the attacks have started once again. Now, right at this very moment, again, folks, again, okay? So now let's go over to Trump's table, because the Wall Street Journal today opened the door to the most secretive room in Washington, those leaks, right? Second leak. I don't believe in leaks. Everything is intentional. According to the newspaper, on Tuesday night, Trump gathered his core group in the White House Situation Room, the Vice President, Vance, Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and the top military officer. On that table, there were three cards, three escalation options. Remember that I mentioned this meeting, that a meeting took place, but we didn't know exactly what was discussed there, and now this newspaper is telling us what was going on inside. The first card is Kark Island, the oil island, but here there's something new that changes what I told you yesterday. According to the newspaper, the option discussed is to take the island and other points along the strait. We'd already talked about taking the island, and now they're talking about other points along the strait, and that kind of justifies, right, these targets that I pointed out here, right, guys? If the island is right here, you take strategic points along the strait using American troops, not the Kurds, not the neighbors, not the Israelis, American soldiers setting foot on Iranian soil. Do you remember that yesterday Trump talked about other people carrying out the ground campaign? Do you remember that? In that closed-door meeting, the option being discussed involves American soldiers themselves, not others. And Trump himself commented on this here on Fox. He said that taking Kark is unlikely, but it's not off the table. And then he also said the following, guys, a phrase that ties everything together. That's why we need to listen to all the versions and try to put this together to try to understand what's going on behind all of this. Look at what he said, guys. If we degrade them deep enough, I would do it. Trump said that, guys. Degrade deep enough. And now let's go back to yesterday. What happened yesterday? The base was left in the dark. What about the armored vehicles, the intelligence, the commandos taken down there? Remember that? In other words, degradation. Exactly what he just described as a condition to enter Kark Island. Kark. Look, he talks about something, just so you can connect what happened the night before and observe the targets. The second card is named after a tool, right? The Pickaxe Mountain. If you follow the channel, you've already heard this name here, I think twice. It's a complex of tunnels dug into the rock near Natanz, connected to the regime's nuclear activities. According to some analysts, it's about 100 meters deep. Who knows, right? It could even be more than that, made of solid rock. And experts say it's one of the hardest targets on the planet to hit. Maybe even impossible to take out from the sky, right? That is, with bunker-penetrating bombs. Even with the biggest American bunker-buster bombs, there's no way to reach it, according to those same weapons experts, guys. That's why this card, Pickaxe Mountain, carries so much weight. If you can't get it from the sky, what's left? Let's think about it. The Americans have never struck this place. Not in last year's war, nor in the one in February. And now, the option is on the table. The option to go in by land. And Trump talked about this option in public, in a radio interview, loud and clear. We are going to tear open Pickaxe Mountain. Tell the Iranians to be ready. End quote. Tell the Iranians. In other words, he didn't hide this target. He marked the target. And the third card, you already know, is to extend the attacks to Iran's energy infrastructure. The power plants he had already promised for Monday. We can say that he said next week. Next week we have to understand that it's Monday. It could be after that, okay? But I understand that Monday is when this probability of him attacking the power plants starts to count. According to the newspaper, Trump still hasn't made a final decision on any of these three options. And he keeps saying in public and in private that he prefers the diplomatic solution, but look at the drawing of the three cards together. Karg is the cash box. The mountain is the regime's atomic insurance policy. And energy is the backbone of the country. In other words, it's not a list of military targets, it's a list of the three things that keep the regime alive. And there was another voice from the American government speaking today. Vice President Vance, on one of the most listened to podcasts in the world, okay? That guy Joe Rogan, that's his name. He said the following about the campaign in Iran. He explained the logic with a sentence that sums up the doctrine, okay? We're not just going to unleash fire non-stop. We're going to use military force as one of the many tools we have to solve the problem. That sums up everything. His entire 1-hour interview, he sums it up in just that part of what he said, guys. In other words, for him, force is a tool to push negotiations, not the final goal. It's the same line that Trump repeats, guys. In the end, trying to bring them back to the negotiating table and make them give up everything the Americans are demanding, but we know that's not going to happen. They might try to fool the Americans one more time, but they will never surrender, guys. The Iranians will never surrender, because they are Shiites and Shiites don't surrender. You need to understand what a Shiite is. A Shiite doesn't surrender. He prefers an honorable death over surrendering, okay? That's how it was in the war between them and the Sunnis, and that's how it will be between them and the United States as well. But in that same conversation, Vance also said something else, and I need to tell you this honestly, because it involves Israel. He accused people within the Israeli government of funding influence operations against him and against the deal with Iran. He also said the following, that Israel is losing the battle for public opinion in the United States. This is a fact. He said this, the president, vice president, and he also said this publicly, guys, okay? There's real friction at the top, and I'm not hiding it. This is what's happening right now. But notice the counterbalance that occurred the same day, which few reported together, though both are needed to see the full picture. The American Congress voted on a bill that called for an end to security aid to Israel, the $3.3 billion per year. And the bill was defeated, rejected by a large majority with votes from both sides, Republicans and Democrats. And look at this detail. Almost half of the Democratic lawmakers who harshly criticized Israel's operations voted to maintain aid to Israel. And why? Because on the inside, folks, they understand something that gets lost in the media noise. This aid is in America's interest before it's a favor to Israel. So that's the honest picture. On one side, there's real friction between the vice president and Israel, and on the other, the foundation of the alliance remains strong because in Congress, when it's time to vote on the money, both parties sided with Israel, much to their despair, and the leftists went crazy over this vote. Because everyone swore they would block everything, there were people already celebrating on YouTube saying that Israel missed the opportunity or lost the United States, and the leftists went crazy, right? And Israel also responded in its own way. After Trump's statements about Israel also leaving parts of Lebanon, this is already another subject, withdrawing from parts of Lebanon. Trump previously stated he prefers Israel withdraw from Lebanon and Syria. The Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz called Peter Hegseth. The two aligned on cooperation, and Israel Katz left a statement that was both polite and firm at the same time. Quote, "We never asked the United States to act in our place along our borders. We are committed to defending the citizens of Israel against any threat, and that's what we are going to do." End quote. He also recalled the events of October 7th. Israel remains in the security zones in Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza to protect those who live on the border. Friends talk, but borders are not outsourced. That was the message from Israel Katz to the American government and also to Trump. These planes that are showing up here are at Ben Gurion Airport in Israel, okay? These images. And also on our side, today there was news from here at home as well. an exclusive from the Jerusalem Post, which published an interesting article today, responding directly to all this pressure. Within 2 years, Israel will mass produce its own precision bombs here. We're already building them. Now, according to this report, they will be mass produced. That is, in large quantities. The kits that turn regular ammunition into guided weapons as well. That hit the target in any weather, right? There could be a hurricane going on, and it still hits the target. The JDAM standard, which until now depended on the Americans, will be built in Israel. And do you know when this race started? In 2024, when the previous American government, Biden, froze part of the shipment of munitions to Israel in the middle of the conflict, and on that day Israel learned a lesson it will never forget. Allies are essential, but borders and ammunition stockpiles can't depend on anyone's mood. Since then, the Ministry of Defense has signed billion-dollar contracts with local industry and accelerated production lines. And look at the result that the report revealed. It was this early preparation that allowed our Air Force to operate in Iran, right? To launch operations in Iran and Lebanon, practically without any ammunition restrictions. In other words, it was produced here, produced in Israel, okay? There's also a behind-the-scenes detail, a lesson in strategy. Israel ran out of money, and do you know where the solution came from? From the sale of the Arrow defense system to Germany. Remember, it was sold to Germany? So, German money funded self-sufficiency in munitions and even multiplied the production of our interceptors by up to 4 times. In other words, there was criticism for Israel sending interceptors abroad. They criticized, asking why interceptors were being sent abroad in the middle of a conflict, but it all adds up. On the contrary, only a minimal portion was sent out, and the agreement added dozens more interceptors to our stockpile right during the most critical period we went through. In other words, while in Washington the Vice President complains about Israel and Congress votes on aid, Israel is already building for the day when it won't need to ask for anything anymore. Selling defense to finance independence, this is playing chess with the future, folks. You don't ask for independence, you build it. And on the Iranian side, the day ended with 2 statements that you also need to remember. The spokesperson for the Revolutionary Guard explained their doctrine. At this stage, he said that the enemy shouldn't think they can turn this into a war of attrition. That, at this stage, Iran's focus is to dismantle the American offensive infrastructure in the region, and that the next stage will begin right after. What will the next stage be? If this one is to destroy the American bases, right, the offensive infrastructure, then what does he mean by the next stage? A ground invasion of Kuwait like he threatened? Bahrain? What could it be? What could it be? And he also added another threat: if they touch the infrastructure, we will strike all the remaining infrastructure in the region. End quote. All the remaining infrastructure in the region, this directly connects with the Houthis' promise about Saudi Arabia. It's the same playbook on both sides of the axis. Inside the Iranian parliament, a deputy sparked an internal fight, accusing the president and parliament head Ghali Ghalibafi of lacking the courage to admit the agreement with the Americans has collapsed. Enough! That's what he means. He said, with or without a war name, the third war has already started. He said it, folks, the third war has started. Words from this deputy? He also disclosed something damaging to the regime's finances. Besides withholding dollars from the agreement, the Americans, he insisted, would have pay close attention. Blocked the money, frozen, blocked almost $1 billion in digital currencies. Look at that, cryptocurrencies. In other words, even the regime's crypto wallet is also under pressure. The financial clock I've been showing you for days keeps ticking. So write down these 3 signs to watch from now on. The first is confirmation. If there's confirmation about Abu Dhabi and Dubai, if there's official confirmation that Iran fired at the Emirates, that wouldn't be surprising, right, folks? It probably happened. The pattern has broken and this war changed in scale today. The second is Trump's decision among the 3 cards: cargo, carg, mountain, pickaxe, or energy. The Monday scenario involving the plants is still on the table. Will something happen on Monday? And now, with the crisis room already consulted, there are 3 options on the table. And the third is Sunday, folks. The Cup's final whistle could signal the start of the next phase. And before I finish, let me give you my take on all this, right? Because there are people saying out there that when the World Cup game ends, it will be the signal for the United States' next phase. Reports that are going around, right, guys? Analysts are saying that maybe everything will really kick off after the World Cup is truly over, okay? But before I wrap up here, let me give you my take on all of this, where this story is going. Notice something that almost nobody sees. There are checks on this situation. Despite everything we're seeing, there are still restraints, guys. There is contrapeso, a counterbalance. Trump, it's true, Trump has picked up the pace. No one can say otherwise. The intensity has increased, but deep down, these rounds are a blunt form of dialogue between Iran and the United States with the sole objective to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and force a return to the negotiating table. That's why I'm telling you, and take note, this is still not all-out war. There still isn't a decision by the Americans to go all the way with this confrontation. That decision doesn't exist. And I don't even know if Trump, in his mind, is already at the point of thinking about an all-out war. And notice how much more things can still escalate. It's a lot, folks. So far, the attacks have targeted infrastructure, rail lines, petrochemicals, some parts of the energy sector, right? But it can go way beyond that. They could go after the regime itself. In other words, there's still a long way to go before we can say it's an all-out war. And the big total confrontation isn't right at the doorstep at this exact moment. Do you know why? Many people think the confrontation has already begun, but it hasn't. Trump is in control, understands the situation, and is setting the pace. And where is this going? Where is this going to lead? He will wear Iran down, for sure, but on the other hand, he pushes Iran to hold on even tighter to the Strait of Hormuz and puts Trump in a tough spot. And then comes the question that remains for the end. If after all these rounds Iran still doesn't come back to the table, Trump might go for something much bigger, a tougher, heavier, and more definitive move. And now, on Israel's side, let me be very clear with you, this is good. It's great, these rounds are excellent for Israel, folks. Iran isn't attacking Israel right now because they know the consequences. If Israel joined the fight, Iran would likely be much weaker and could lose its leadership. And on the other hand, Iran keeps attacking American bases in the Gulf and Jordan, gets a stronger American response, and keeps getting weaker. In other words, weakening the Iranian regime is still in Israel's interest. But today, it's Trump who is doing that job, not Israel. Excellent, right? Great. But now I need to look ahead and ask the right question. And after that? Because sooner or later, Iran will come back and say, okay, fine, let's negotiate. We know they're going to do that, guys. They're going to stand up and say, let's talk. And when this happens, someone will have to put a real solution on the table because these rounds that have happened so far don't solve anything at all. They don't solve the nuclear issue. They don't solve the Strait of Hormuz. They don't solve the missile issue. Nothing, guys. For now, they're just buying time, wearing Iran down, which is good for Israel. But it's not a situation that can last forever. This scenario is going to change soon, and it's going to change very quickly, guys. And despite everything you've seen today, despite the fire, the explosions, the threats, the posters, and what's happening right now, guys, there's a war going on right now, at this very moment. Pay close attention, guys. Did American forces carry out new attacks against Iran? Against Iran. Contra Iran. Now, guys, this is the 5th consecutive round with the goal of damaging their military capabilities. Let's see the planes. What's going on there? Just a second before we continue. I'll put the planes here. They're holding, right? Orbiting, circling. Near Kerak Island, this is prep for a ground incursion. The island's right here. Look. Karak. See here, Bushehr, this is preparation. Look at this. Despite the ongoing war and everything happening, the White House just released it now at the end of the day. The White House confirmed point by point the following, that Iran is still talking to the United States and that it shows willingness to reach an agreement. These statements were made just now, folks. These statements came out a few minutes ago, okay? That they are still talking. It could also be a narrative for a domestic audience in the United States to tell the American people we're still trying anyway. That the recent actions against Iran happened because of the breach of the Memorandum of Understanding. That was the White House speaking, saying that President Trump proved to the world that the United States can strike Iran at any time, anywhere. That Trump is always open to a diplomatic solution and believes in achieving peace through strength. And the most revealing detail of all, the White House said that the Iranian regime is divided and that one part of it is already in favor of making a deal and the other is not. And now, go back with me to my interpretation from 2 minutes ago. I told you that all of this is tough talk to force Iran back to the table. And that sooner or later Iran would come back and say, let's negotiate. And then the White House just made it very clear that Iran hasn't stopped talking, that they want a deal and that the regime is split down the middle. They just said that now, guys. It wasn't yesterday, this statement just came out right now. Once again, right? On the first day of this new round, Trump repeated that they had called him desperately to make a deal. In other words, in the middle of all this smoke, the negotiation door was never closed. It was never closed, guys. It's still open, waiting for Iran to get tired. Got it, right? That's the truth. And today, American fire guys knocked on Tehran's door for the first time. Just to wrap up here, the blockade got teeth and stopped the first ship by force. Iran showed the missile it keeps for Israel, displayed a threat against Trump on an avenue, and if the reports from tonight are confirmed, it broke the pattern that was holding the Gulf. And the President of the United States has three cards in his hand, all pointed at the heart of the regime. The board is no longer moving piece by piece, it's moving all at once. Od lo ra'item klum. One more word. A few more little words here in Hebrew for you to learn. Od lo ra'item klum. You haven't seen anything yet, folks? Nothing. There's still a lot more to happen. And I'm here following every move, every flight, every decision here in the Middle East. Subscribe, turn on notifications. That's very important. Share this with your family and work groups because mainstream media doesn't connect things like this. I know they don't. Thank you, Paolo, for the super sticker. Thank you, Marina. Thank you, Silvana and Valdir Costa. Davi, drink a little water. Now I'll have some water. I did, Valdir. Thanks for the reminder. I tend to forget. Thank you, Renato. Long live Israel. Stay strong, Davy. What they did to the people of Israel, including, I can't read this. Again, does anyone know about the UN? Does it still exist? What is the UN? Does it even exist? Thank you, Corina. Davi, now is the moment when all the countries that always rejected and persecuted Israel are already paying for the evil they did. And Israel has the law of return. I agree with you. But remember what's happening behind the scenes. Turkey is forming alliances with Egypt. All right? Turkey is forming alliances with Egypt. Turkey is in Syria. Turkey is getting stronger. The Sunni axis, guys, another ring is being formed around Israel, right? We have to pay attention to what's happening on our side too. Don't forget about the agreement that was signed between Turkey and Egypt this week, right? Turkey and the other country have a military cooperation agreement. So, on the other hand, we're weakening the Shia axis and there's the Sunni axis with Erdogan, right? Erdogan trying to revive the Ottoman Empire again. That must be it. We can't forget what's happening on the other side. The days are being shortened. There's nothing to negotiate. I also think there's nothing to negotiate, but it's not up to us. Thank you, Rodrigo Mara. I'll do the cuts, okay? I usually do the cuts and upload them. I have another channel. You'll see it down here in the name. Davi Almeida Almescani Cortez. I have a channel just for cuts. I can't do the cuts alone because it's too much work and I don't have time. Like I said, I work by myself. I'm the only one doing this. There's no team. There's no one behind the scenes. There's no cameraman. There's no one writing. There's no editor cutting my live streams. Unfortunately, I don't have those people to work here to make these kinds of clips, okay? As long as I have time, I do the cuts myself. When I can, I do it, but unfortunately, I don't have time for that, guys. I don't have time. Iran, after having so many openings of the strait, still continues. What I find most interesting is that the Brazilian media is not giving prominence to this action. I wonder why Israel. Sylvia, thank you for bringing this up now, okay? Because I was going to talk about this today. Notice that they're hardly talking about what's going on in the Middle East. Do you agree with me? Besides, channels like mine on YouTube get almost no mention at all in the national media there in Brazil, in Portugal, it hardly shows up. What's happening is just a footnote. But at the moment Israel fires, I'm not even talking about the moment Iran fires at Israel, because when that happens, no one will know either. Only I will bring this to you. But when Israel launches a counterattack on Iran, then the whole world lights up, the entire media turns the spotlight back on Israel. And that's why Israel stays out of this war. Because as long as the spotlight isn't on the region, the United States keeps weakening the regime more and more, okay? And Israel has a strategy behind all of this, folks. The moment the spotlight turns back to the Middle East region, it's because Israel is back in the war. So leave it as it is. It's great. It's great. We can sleep here at night without alarms, even in the middle of the night. My friends, this is the information for now. Today, I'm only going to do one live stream. Unless something serious happens in the middle of the night, then I'll do another live. Today, there was only one live. I had to do a lot of things during the day. So, I didn't have time to do the first live of the day, okay? But there was a lot to share. There's still a lot to share. I'll leave that for tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'll do 2 live streams again. At the same time, 7 a.m. in Brazil, I think. Noon here, 1 p.m. in Israel. In Europe, it's noon as well, and then the evening live. The evening live stream will be around 5 p.m. A hug to all my friends in Israel. And see you at the next live stream.